How have you been this week? Were you really fed up with somebody's behavior at work? Or maybe you were just perplexed by some strange situation? Or maybe even worse, maybe you received some sorrowful news this week. How's it been going? Today, we want to talk about a few synonyms for some regular words that you probably already know. But we want to talk about a few other synonyms that can broaden your vocabulary just a little bit more. And I'm excited to teach these to you today. But a little warning, some of these are not so exciting and joyful. Today we have some words that are a little more sad, maybe even depressing. But I think you'll enjoy this, and I think we'll find that we have a lot of opportunities to use these words. I'm Phil from Mayak. Thanks for joining me. So today, I want to look at 3 words that you already know: angry, confused, and sad. These are words that you already know, and maybe you even use them a little bit. And today, with each of these words, I want to give you some new words that you can use in place of these sort of general words. Today we're going to talk about synonyms, words that are similar to another word, but in this case have a little bit of a different meaning. So today's lesson might be a little more of a downer for you. It's not so joyful and happy, but I think we'll find lots of ways to use these words. Let's go. First we'll start with the word angry. Many people know what angry is. Many of us use this word, but there are lots of other situations that we can use different words to talk about different types of anger. The first word we'll talk about is annoyed. Annoyed. This means slightly angry or irritated. And we could say, Tom was annoyed with Jim. It was a small anger that he had toward Jim because of maybe something small that he was doing. Some little frustration. Next is fed up. We have 2 words. It's actually a phrasal verb here, fed up. And fed up is a little more angry and frustrated about something that has been happening for a long time. Some behavior that's gone on for too long, and you're at the limit now. So a sentence could be, his mom was fed up with the kid's behavior. His mom was fed up with the kid's behavior. The mom had found her limit and she couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to include the word mad. Mad and angry in the US, we use very similarly. Mad, angry. I think I might say that mad is a little bit more angry than just the word angry. So we could say the brothers were mad at each other, right? They were quite angry at each other. But I also wanted to use this because in Britain, they can also use this word in a way that we don't often use in the States. And that is to mean crazy or insane. He felt as if he were going mad, like crazy in this instance. Now I have 2 words to teach you that are quite similar. Resentful and bitter. Resentful and bitter. These words both mean some anger that happens because of being treated unfairly, or something bad happened probably in the past and you keep it with you until today. So if you're resentful, you've had some bad experience with something and you keep it sort of in your heart. Same with being bitter. You just keep that bad experience with you even until today. Of course, this doesn't make you a very happy person to interact with if you've always got this anger from the past inside of you. So we could say, my colleague was resentful about her boss's unfair criticism. Or my colleague was bitter about her boss's unfair criticism. So there was some criticism that didn't seem fair in the past, at least to the colleague. And this affects the way that she interacts with her boss and maybe even other colleagues because of this bitterness or this resentfulness that's inside of her. Bitterness is tricky and it is not fun. And it is so easy to keep a little bit of bitterness with us as we go about our lives from some unfair situation that happened to us in the past. The Bible actually says not to let a root of bitterness grow up in us, Because bitterness starts as something little, and then it grows and grows, and it can really take over. So bitterness is hard. Bitterness is hard on us, and it's hard on others. And there is a better way: forgiveness. Forgiveness is not one of the words we're talking about today, but it's a really important one as we talk about synonyms for anger, and especially this bitterness and resentfulness. If we have that in our lives, we need to stop that. We need to give it up. Forgiveness is better. The next one is a really angry word, but it's a fun one. Livid. Livid. And I think you have to say it like this. Livid. Livid is furiously angry, very, very angry and mad about some situation or something that happened. So we can say, he had to pay some enormous fee that was very unexpected. He didn't plan on having to pay this fee, this money, and he was livid because it was unexpected, it was big, and he was just so angry that somebody would make him pay this. He was livid. Okay, which one of these angry words could you use this week? I know, it's a crazy situation. I don't want us all to go around talking about our anger every day, but maybe there's one of these words that you could use in writing or in speaking and talking about some situation in your life that's been happening and how you were angry about it. Now we'll move on to words about confused. Now, confused is when you don't really understand a situation. We can use this word in many, many different situations. But we have a few words that are sort of under confused, and we can expand our vocabulary a bit now. So the first word I'd like to talk about is uncertain. Uncertain. Now, this one is not difficult. Uncertain just means not certain. Something is not definite. It's not for sure. But I'd like to use it in maybe a different way. We could say, because of her illness, her future was uncertain. Now, this is more than just a basic, simple use of uncertain. This person is actually talking about her future. Because of this illness, maybe it was cancer, maybe it was something else, the future was uncertain. I know this is a difficult example. It's hard. It's easy to talk about, I'm uncertain about what type of ice cream I will eat. I'm uncertain about what type of car I will buy. But it's another thing to be just uncertain about life, and even life because of some very difficult situations now. Maybe they're financial situations, maybe it's medical situations, but these make our future uncertain. But truly, life is uncertain, and that's part of being human. We don't know the future. We don't know what will happen. So this sentence, because of her illness, her future was uncertain, is definitely not a fun one to talk about. I'm even sorry to give this example, but I know that many of you probably have already had to use this type of sentence, at least in your own language, if not also in English, as you're learning it, because it's life. The next one is indecisive. Now be careful, it's not undecisive, it's indecisive. And this, of course, just means not being decisive. You don't make decisions quickly, easily, or effectively. So an example sentence should be, in business, it's not good to be indecisive. In business, it's not good to be indecisive. Next is perplexed. Perplexed. Isn't that a fun word to say? Just stop the video right now and try to say perplexed 3 times. It's a really fun word to say in English. But perplexed means completely baffled or puzzled. And maybe you don't even know what baffled or puzzled means, but it's very confused. Nothing seems to make sense. Think about doing a puzzle when the pieces aren't going together the right way. So we would say, I'm just perplexed. And in a situation, we could say, she was perplexed by her boss's strange mood. Probably her boss usually comes in very happy, very joyful, very talkative, and one day he came in very stoic, very quiet, and it was strange, and so the woman was totally perplexed by this new behavior. Next is embarrassed. Embarrassed. It's to be awkward, self-conscious, or even ashamed of yourself or something you've done. He felt very embarrassed when his pants ripped while he was at work. That would be very embarrassing. You would feel self-conscious, ashamed, you would feel silly, so we can say that you are embarrassed. The word lost. Now this one, of course, is lost. I don't know where I am. That's maybe obvious to you. But it's also when we are confused, uncertain, or just in great, great difficulties in life. We are lost. So an example could be, she sat alone on her bed, holding her phone, and feeling completely lost. So if we were watching this sentence play out in a movie, probably somebody called her with some difficult information, some difficult news. And now, after this news, she's just lost. She doesn't know what's going on. We could say she's confused, but it's much deeper than confused. She's lost. I'm sorry, we are not going to go any more joyful with our main words. Our last of the words for today is the word sad. Now sad, everybody knows what sad is, and everybody uses sad. But let's try using some other words that can give us some new ways to talk about being sad. So the first word is depressed, just being in a state of general unhappiness. Now, of course, we know that this can also be a clinical word. Someone is clinically depressed. So we need to be careful how we use this. Maybe I hate to say it, but in the United States, we often use this word quite casually. Oh, I'm just really depressed today. I'm sad, we mean. But there are people that are depressed. And so we want to be careful when we use depressed that to recognize that there are certainly levels of this. But in casual conversation, we can use it as just a state of unhappiness. And a very simple way to talk about it is the weather made him feel depressed. Maybe it was snowy, cold, dark weather, and so many days of this made him feel very unhappy, very sad. So he was depressed. Next, we have the word desperate. And desperate means feeling so hopeless about a situation that it just feels like it will be impossible to deal with. We need help. We need something because we can't handle it on our own. This situation is too difficult and I can't do it. So going back to the illness situation, we can say she was desperate to find a cure for her husband's illness. Her husband was quite ill and all the doctors had no idea. Nobody was any help. And finally, the wife was so desperate to find some cure because it seemed impossible. Next is crushed. It's a feeling of overwhelming disappointment or even embarrassment, just so much that you feel crushed. And maybe for a teenager, he could say he was crushed that he wasn't good enough to be on the basketball team. It was such a high hope that he had that he wasn't good enough to be on the basketball team made him feel so disappointed and embarrassed even. So he was, crushed. Mournful or sorrowful. Mournful and sorrowful are quite similar. And I'll be honest, we don't use these words every day, but they are very similar. And for some people, in quite a few situations, they're important. These words are feeling or showing grief. And grief is the sadness that we feel about losing someone or about a very big loss in our life. So we can say, she looked at him with mournful eyes. In her eyes was such a sense of sadness about a loss. Or he heard the sorrowful news of his father's death. So in this case, the news was sorrowful. It was sad, but sad isn't enough. In this case, we need something more. I'm sorry to ask you this, but have you ever had sorrowful news? I have. A few years ago, my father died of cancer, and I remember at the beginning of this cancer journey, I was sitting in the doctor's office with my mother, and the doctor had called us in after a surgery for my dad. And we sat there together, and the doctor gave us the news that instead of being a simple surgery, he found cancer in my dad, in fact, terminal cancer. And at that moment, at this sorrowful news, the world just seemed to stop. I was sitting there, I was listening, but all of the thoughts of the past and all of my thoughts of future with my father came crashing together in the present as I heard this sorrowful, mournful news. I really wish that your English studies could be without this word, but it's not. You don't just get to talk about pets and weather and sports and hobbies and what you do for a job in English, because English is communication, and communication is a part of life, and in life there is sorrow. And so these words are very important in your life and in my life, as we can even communicate together. Maybe my question is, how do you handle sorrowful news? We all get it sometimes, but maybe one important thing is what we do with that news. We all have reactions. I'm a follower of Jesus, and being a follower of Jesus does not make my life automatically easy, but to know that I have this one who loves me and created me and knows me even better than myself is life-changing for me. So how do you handle your sorrowful news or your mournful times? The next word is weepy. Weepy. It's a little bit of a funny word. You could say this word 3 times as well, and it probably sounds maybe a little silly. But weepy comes from the word weep, and weep means to cry. So if you're weepy, it just means you're in a state of crying. But this weepiness could be sad or even could be happy, but it just means you're crying a lot. You're in a state of tears. We could say, seeing a bride at a wedding always makes my mom weepy. And in this situation, of course, it's happy. It's good. It's nice to see a wedding and a bride and a groom, but just the beauty of the moment. And this bride and her dress makes my mom weepy, makes her want to cry. The next word is upset. And wow, in English, if we have a word that can be used in a lot of different situations, this is the one. Upset. It could be worried, sad, angry, frustrated, so many different things. But in this case, also sad. You're upset if you're sad. She looked sad and upset after hearing the disappointing news. So she heard something disappointing, and she was just sad. So we can say she was upset. It brought a lot of sadness to her. But as I mentioned, take a look in a dictionary somewhere and you can find lots of different ways to use the word upset, but here's one of them for sad. Thank you for joining me today on this sorrowful, angry, confusing journey that we've had. I hope you've learned a lot of new words. I believe that English is not just for inside of the classroom. That's why you're watching YouTube videos wherever you are right now, because English is life. And so these disappointing, angry words are also a part of life. I hope it's also given you hope, not just hope in English, but even hope in life and in your life situations. Thanks for joining me.